What if the enduring myth of the dragon is not a memory of a creature at all, but a deep and resonant scar left upon the collective unconscious of all life? Imagine it not as a beast of fantasy, but as a fossilized echo of a time when the earth itself grew a fever so profound, so elemental, that it took the form of living fire, a biological event so terrifying that its shadow still flickers in our oldest stories, in the deepest corners of our shared psyche. This is not the tale of a winged reptile hoarding gold, but the story of a geological specter made flesh. It is the story of a planetary antibody that rose from the molten heart of the world to purge it, leaving behind only a whisper in our DNA and a thin, inexplicable layer of dust in the silent record of the rock. This spectral force, this living manifestation of the planet's will, was an event that preceded our own history by an almost unimaginable gulf of time. It was a cleansing fire that left behind mysteries that continue to haunt the edges of our understanding. We are invited to look at the world not as a passive stage for life, but as a living entity with its own immune system, its own ancient memories. The story of the dragon is perhaps the planet's story, a tale that tells itself in the language of geology and deep time. Mysteries like this are merely fragments of that much larger narrative. If you enjoy following these hidden clues and imagining what they might mean for our place in the cosmos, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss the next stage of our quiet exploration into the unknown. Our journey begins 68 million years ago during the late Maastrichtian Age. The Earth is a greenhouse world, a planet of shallow, warm seas and vast, humid continents, draped in an almost alien flora. There are no ice caps at the poles, and the air, thick with oxygen and carbon dioxide, hangs heavy and warm over forests of towering protosequoias. Strange, vibrant flowering plants, new to the world, add splashes of impossible color to the endless green. This is the kingdom of the Tyrannosaurus rex and the Triceratops, the final act of a biological dynasty that has reigned for over 150 million years. The sky is a different shade of blue, the days are shorter, and the very ground beneath your feet hums with a deep volcanic pulse, the slow, steady heartbeat of a world utterly unaware of the change that is about to begin. Life in this era was a grand, brutal, and deeply established cycle, a symphony of existence played out on a continental scale. Vast herds of Edmontosaurus, giant hadrosaurs, migrated across floodplains that would one day become the Badlands of Montana, their passage a thunderous rhythm against the patient earth. In the shallow western interior seaway which split North America in two, mosasaurs, leviathans of the deep, hunted with terrifying and beautiful efficiency. The apex predator, Tyrannosaurus, was not a monster, but a keystone species, a crucial component of this intricate ecological architecture. The world operated on known, predictable rules of biology: predator and prey, photosynthesis and decay, birth and death. It was a system in a perfect, violent equilibrium, a sprawling planetary kingdom of scales and teeth, utterly dominant and seemingly eternal under a familiar sun. The event did not begin with a roar or a cataclysm from the sky. It began with a subtle tremor in the planet's fundamental chemistry, a discordant note in the deep, telluric hum of the world. From the deepest volcanic vents, miles beneath the waves in the Pacific Ring of Fire, and along the nascent Great Rift Valley in Africa, a new form of life began to stir. It was not born of the slow, patient process of Darwinian evolution, but of pure geochemistry, a silicon-based biology fused with exotic heavy metals, a living crucible forged in the planet's mantle. It was something utterly new, an organism that blurred the line between geology and biology. It was a life form that did not belong to the established order, an anomaly rising from the pressures and heat of the world's core. These emergent beings were the Draconis geochemica, and their arrival signaled the end of an era. Their scales were not keratin, but lattices of obsidian and bismuth that shimmered with captured geothermal heat. Their wings were not membranes of flesh and bone, but complex crystalline structures that could manipulate local electromagnetic fields to achieve a silent, effortless flight. They did not eat or hunt. They metabolized raw telluric energy drawn directly from fault lines and magma plumes. They did not breathe fire in the mythical sense. They exhaled superheated plasma, a glowing byproduct of the contained nuclear fusion occurring within a specialized biological organ. Their appearance was a silent, creeping extinction-level event that began long before the famed asteroid. They were a geological plague, and the reigning dinosaurs were nothing more than fragile obstacles in a planetary cleansing. In the quiet halls of modern science, a ghost wanders through the final chapters of the Cretaceous period. Officially, the story of the dinosaurs ends with a cataclysm from the heavens, the Chicxulub impactor, a 6-mile-wide rock that struck with the force of billions of atomic bombs. This narrative is clean, dramatic, and well-supported. Yet, on the periphery of this accepted truth, there are whispers of data that do not fit, of anomalies that suggest the great dynasty of giants was already fading, long before the final curtain fell. Paleontologists call it the Maastrichtian anomaly, a slow, inexplicable decline in biodiversity that began nearly 2 million years before the asteroid. It is a puzzle that challenges our neat timeline of extinction, a quiet question mark hanging over a supposedly solved case. This anomaly is not a minor footnote. It is a profound mystery written in the fossil record itself. Imagine a vibrant, sprawling kingdom, dominant for over 150 million years, suddenly beginning to fray at the edges. Species diversity plummets. The great herds thin out. The fossil beds that were once a rich tapestry of life become strangely sparse, showing a world in a quiet, creeping decline. The conventional explanations, massive volcanic activity in the Deccan Traps, rapid climate change, shifting sea levels, are all plausible contributors. But do they truly account for the sheer scale and strangeness of this slow-motion collapse? Or are they simply the most convenient answers for a phenomenon whose true cause lies just beyond the reach of our current understanding, hidden in the deep static of geologic time? The evidence grows stranger still when we look closer at specific fossil sites in places like China and Patagonia. Here, paleontologists have unearthed remains that defy simple explanation. They find dinosaur skeletons that are not merely broken or scattered by time, but are vitrified, as if they were flash melted by a heat source of impossible intensity, turning bone into dark, swirling glass. The official explanation often defaults to localized events, such as lightning strikes or ancient wildfires. But the patterns are too widespread, the heat required too immense. Could these glassy tombs be evidence of a different kind of weapon, a force of nature not yet cataloged in our textbooks? These anomalies are often dismissed, filed away as geological curiosities, lest they disrupt the coherence of the established narrative. Beneath the well-documented KPG boundary, the thin, dark line of iridium-rich clay that marks the asteroid's global fallout, geologists have detected another, fainter signature. It is a second layer, slightly older, composed of unique, non-terrestrial isotopes and microscopic spherules of fused glass. This layer cannot be fully attributed to the Chicxulub impact or the volcanic eruptions of the Deccan Traps. It speaks of a separate, global event, one that showered the planet in strange elements and superheated particles. It is a faint echo preceding the deafening roar of the asteroid, a geological whisper of a different apocalypse. A silent, thin scar on the rock that suggests the world was subjected to not one, but two distinct catastrophes in close succession, with the first one being almost entirely overlooked by history. Science, by its very nature, seeks order and builds narratives from evidence. It is a cautious and meticulous storyteller. Anomalies like vitrified fossils and inexplicable isotopic layers are often treated like dissonant notes in a well-rehearsed symphony. They are difficult to integrate, and it is far easier to attribute them to known, if ill-fitting, phenomena than to propose a radical new hypothesis. The academic world builds its foundation upon consensus, and the idea of a previously unknown extinction mechanism, especially one as outlandish as a geological life form, resides far out on the fringes of speculation. And so, the evidence remains, quiet and patient, waiting for a new framework, a new way of seeing that can finally give it a voice and a place within the grand story of our planet's past. And then there is the human story, a story told not in rock but in myth, across deserts and jungles, on continents separated by vast oceans and millennia of cultural evolution. Our earliest ancestors drew, carved, and whispered tales of the same impossible creature. The serpentine form, the reptilian scales, the membranous wings, and the breath of fire. The dragon is a universal phantom haunting the dawn of human consciousness. From the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica to the wise lung of ancient China and the fearsome worm of European lore, the archetype is remarkably consistent. How did cultures with no possible contact independently invent such a specific and powerful being? Is it merely a coincidence, a fluke of the imaginative human mind, or is it an echo of something far older? The psychologist Carl Jung proposed the existence of a collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of innate knowledge and imagery inherited by all of humanity. Within this deep psychic ocean swim the archetypes, universal symbols like the mother, the hero, and the shadow. The dragon is undeniably one of the most powerful and persistent of these archetypes. But what if an archetype is more than just a psychological symbol? What if it is a form of memory, a deep, resonant scar left not on our minds, but on our very biology? A genetic ghost passed down through countless generations, an epigenetic echo of a real, world-altering event that our distant mammalian ancestors witnessed firsthand. A memory of a time when the sky truly did hold fire-breathing serpents. Let us imagine for a moment our most ancient relatives, the small, shrew-like mammals of the late Cretaceous. They were not the rulers of the earth. They lived in the shadows of giants, in burrows and hollow trees, their lives dictated by caution and fear. They survived not by fighting, but by hiding. What would they have witnessed during the reign of the Draconis Geochimica? They would have seen glowing forms drift silently through the night sky, forests turn to glass, and the world itself seemingly set aflame. The sheer, overwhelming terror of such an event would be a trauma on a planetary scale. Could such a profound and primal fear become encoded in their DNA, a survival instinct passed down to their descendants, including us? A warning whispered from cell to cell across 66 million years. The greatest accomplice to this ancient secret is time itself. 66 million years is an abyss of silence, an almost unimaginable gulf that erodes mountains, swallows continents, and grinds evidence into dust. The Earth is a master of recycling its own history. Tectonic plates subduct, carrying ancient seabeds and their secrets back into the molten mantle. Glaciers scour landscapes bare, and wind and water relentlessly break down rock. The crystalline, metallic bodies of the Draconis Geochimica would not have fossilized like bone. They would have disintegrated, their exotic elements bleeding back into the Earth's crust, leaving only the faintest chemical stain for future geologists to puzzle over. The silence of deep time is the mystery's most formidable guardian. Our own perception is another barrier. Our minds are built for a human timescale, for days, seasons, and lifetimes. We are carbon-based life, conditioned to think of biology in terms of flesh, blood, and bone. The concept of a silicon-based, geological life form that metabolizes telluric energy and exhales plasma stretches the very fabric of what we define as life. It sounds like mythology precisely because it falls so far outside our biological experience. But is the universe truly limited by our imagination? Is it not more likely that our definitions are too narrow, our perspective too confined? Perhaps the greatest leap required to solve this mystery is not one of scientific discovery, but of imaginative possibility. So we stand at a curious crossroads, a place where a series of geological anomalies meets a persistent, universal myth. On one side, we have the unexplained decline of a dynasty, vitrified fossils, and a mysterious layer of dust beneath the Earth's most famous scar. On the other, we have the shared dream of the dragon, an image that has haunted humanity since its inception. The official story of our planet's history has quiet, empty spaces. It is within these spaces, between the known facts and the lingering questions, that our exploration begins. We are not seeking to prove a fantastic theory, but to listen patiently to the whispers that emanate from these gaps, hoping to hear the echo of a forgotten truth. To understand the shadow, we must first look at the light. The story of the end of the Cretaceous period, as it is most often told, is a story of sudden, cosmic violence. It is centered around the KPG boundary, a thin, dark line in the Earth's geological strata, visible across the entire globe. This layer is rich in iridium, an element rare on the Earth's surface but common in asteroids. It is the signature of the Chicxulub impactor, a 6-mile-wide rock that struck the Yucatan Peninsula with unimaginable force. This event is our anchor point, the dramatic, accepted conclusion to the age of dinosaurs. It is a clean, powerful, and scientifically validated narrative of death from above, a story that provides a definitive answer to one of history's greatest questions. The impact narrative is compelling because its evidence is so profound and widespread. The iridium layer is the global tombstone of a lost world. Below it, the fossil record teems with the diversity of the late Cretaceous. Above it, there is a profound silence, followed by the slow, tentative rise of the mammals. The impact winter that followed a collision, a long twilight of dust and soot, choked the atmosphere, blocked the sun, and collapsed the planetary food chain from the bottom up. It was a swift, brutal, and indiscriminate end. But is a single dramatic event ever the whole story? Or does the Earth write its history in more subtle, overlapping chapters, with one ending bleeding quietly into the next? This accepted history provides a sense of order, a clear line between cause and effect. It is a story that satisfies our need for closure. The dinosaurs reigned, an asteroid fell, and their kingdom vanished. It is a complete and powerful tale, supported by decades of painstaking research. Yet, science is not about final answers. It is about persistent questions. And when we look closer at the final pages of the Cretaceous, just before that definitive last line is drawn by the asteroid, we find that the story begins to unravel. The narrative becomes less certain, filled with whispers and anomalies that suggest the world of the dinosaurs was already fading, already haunted by a different kind of ending long before the sky fell. The first and most significant of these whispers is the Mastician anomaly. For roughly 2 million years leading up to the Chicxulub impact, the fossil record shows a steady, inexplicable decline in biodiversity. Imagine the world as a vibrant tapestry, woven with countless threads of different species. In the late Maastrichtian, that tapestry begins to fray. The great herds of hadrosaurs thin out. The number of distinct ceratopsian species dwindles. Even the mighty tyrannosaurs seem to become less varied. The world was simplifying, losing its complexity, as if a slow, creeping sickness was stealing the color and life from the planet. One species at a time. What could cause such a profound planetary decline in a system that had been stable for millions of years? This wasn't a localized problem. The decline is documented in fossil beds from North America to Asia. It wasn't just the large dinosaurs either. The fossilized pollen record shows a similar decline in plant diversity, suggesting that the very foundations of the ecosystem were becoming unstable. The world was growing quieter, less robust. It was a system under a profound and mysterious stress. This slow-motion extinction event is a puzzle that doesn't quite fit the sudden, cataclysmic narrative of the asteroid. It implies that the dinosaurs were not struck down in their prime, but were instead the inhabitants of a kingdom already in a state of deep and irreversible decay, their reign ending not with a bang, but with a long, drawn-out sigh. The prevailing scientific theory for this decline points to the Deccan Traps, a region in modern-day India that experienced one of the largest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. Over hundreds of thousands of years, these eruptions flooded the atmosphere with greenhouse gases and sulfur dioxide, triggering wild climate swings and acid rain. This was undoubtedly a massive, world-altering event, a planetary fever expressed through lava and ash. It is a powerful and logical explanation for a world in decline. But does it truly account for all the strange evidence left behind in the rock? Or is it simply the most convenient suspect for a crime whose true nature is far stranger than we have allowed ourselves to imagine? The Deccan Traps can explain climate change and a stressed biosphere, but there are other, more specific anomalies that this theory struggles to address. In the fossil beds of Patagonia and parts of rural China, paleontologists have discovered dinosaur remains that are not merely fossilized, but vitrified. Their bones have been transformed into a dark, glassy substance, as if they were flash-heated to an extreme temperature far beyond that of a simple forest fire or a nearby lava flow. The very structure of the bone has been melted and reformed into something akin to obsidian. These are not isolated incidents, but a recurring pattern, a strange and unsettling signature left upon the final generation of these magnificent creatures. What terrestrial force could be responsible for such a phenomenon? A lightning strike can create small, glassy tubes called fulgurites when it hits sand, but it lacks the scale and breadth to vitrify the skeleton of a 40-foot-long sauropod. A wildfire, even one of incredible intensity, burns unevenly and would likely char bone to ash rather than melt it into a uniform, glassy state. The heat required for such a transformation is immense, focused, and delivered with incredible speed. These glassy tombs are a profound physical anomaly, a piece of evidence that sits uncomfortably within our established models of the late Cretaceous world, pointing to a force of nature that we have yet to properly name or understand. These vitrified fossils are like a message written in a language we have forgotten how to read. They speak of an energy source that is not part of the conventional geological or meteorological toolkit. They suggest a weapon, a presence, or a natural event of a kind that has no modern parallel. The official explanations often feel like attempts to fit a square peg into a round hole, attributing these strange relics to localized, mundane events that strain credulity when viewed as a global pattern. Could it be that we are looking at the direct aftermath of an encounter with a form of life that wielded energy in a way that our own biology can barely comprehend? A life that killed not with teeth and claws, but with pure, directed heat. Beneath the well-documented KPG boundary, in certain geological sites, lies another faint clue, a second, ghostlier layer. It is not defined by iridium, but by a subtle spike in non-terrestrial isotopes of silicon and rare earth metals like bismuth, along with microscopic spherules of fused glass that are chemically distinct from those created by a meteor impact or volcanic eruption. This whisper-thin stratum is older than the Chicxulub debris field by thousands of years. It is a separate scar, a different global event that showered the planet in a fine dust of exotic materials. It is the faintest of echoes, easily missed, and often attributed to statistical noise or sedimentary mixing. But what if it is not noise at all? What if this second, fainter layer is the true tombstone of the Draconis geochemica? It would be the residue of their existence, the fine ash left behind after a planetary fever burned itself out. The exotic isotopes would be the remnants of their unique silicon-based metabolism, and the glass spherules would be the condensed vapor of their plasma breath, scattered across the globe on stratospheric winds. This layer tells a story of a different kind of apocalypse, one that was not concussive and sudden, but thermal and pervasive. It suggests the world was subjected to a global cleansing by fire from within, just before it was dealt a final, brutal blow from without. The asteroid may have been the executioner, but something else was the plague. The silence from the scientific community on such a radical hypothesis is understandable. Science builds its understanding incrementally, based on repeatable observations and verifiable evidence. The idea of a geological lifeform capable of exhaling plasma belongs to the realm of myth, not geology. Anomalies like vitrified fossils and strange isotopic layers are treated as outliers, interesting puzzles to be solved within the existing paradigm, not as evidence that the paradigm itself is incomplete. The burden of proof for an extraordinary claim is, and should be, extraordinarily high. And so, the evidence remains filed away, classified as unexplained, waiting patiently in the quiet archives of geological surveys and paleontological journals. Findings like this remind us how little we truly know. If you're fascinated by these missing pieces of history, subscribing will keep you close to the next revelation. The story of our planet is far from finished, and the most incredible chapters may be the ones that are still hidden, waiting for a new perspective to bring them into the light. The gaps in our knowledge are not failures. They are invitations to wonder, to speculate, and to explore the very limits of what we consider possible. Let us consider for a moment the fundamental nature of life itself. Our definition is profoundly biased by our own existence. We are carbon-based, water-dependent organisms, born of a specific evolutionary path. We think of life in terms of DNA, cells, and metabolisms that consume organic matter. But is this the only way the universe can create complexity and consciousness? Theoretical biologists have long speculated about alternative biochemistries, with silicon being the most likely candidate to replace carbon. Silicon can form complex molecular chains just as carbon can, and it is far more abundant in the Earth's crust. It is the very stuff of rock and sand. A silicon-based life form would be utterly alien to our understanding. It would thrive not in the cool, watery environments we cherish, but in the crushing pressures and searing heat of the Earth's mantle. Its blood might be molten silicates, its nerves a network of crystalline conductors. It would not eat plants or animals, but would metabolize geothermal and electromagnetic energy directly from the planet's core. Such a being would be less an animal and more a sentient geological process, a living extension of the planet itself. It would not leave behind bones to fossilize, but would, upon its death, simply crumble back into the crust, its exotic elements dissolving into the surrounding rock. The absence of a dragon skeleton is therefore not evidence against their existence. It is a predictable consequence of their hypothetical biology. We have been searching for the wrong kind of ghost. We have been looking for the fossilized remains of a carbon-based reptile, when we should have been looking for the subtle chemical stains and thermal scars left by a being made of crystal and fire. The evidence of their reign is not in what we can find, but in the strange voids and inexplicable transformations they left behind, in the vitrified bones of their victims, and the thin, anomalous layer of dust that settled after their passing. Now let us bridge the immense gap of 66 million years and turn to the human record. On every inhabited continent, from the caves of the Pyrenees to the rock walls of the Australian outback, our earliest ancestors felt a profound need to record their world. They drew the animals they hunted, bison, mammoths, and deer, and alongside these creatures of daily life, they drew something else. They drew serpents, often with wings, often associated with the sky, lightning, and fire. The feathered serpent of the Maya, the rainbow serpent of the Aboriginal Dreamtime, the great dragons of Chinese mythology, these are not recent inventions. Their roots stretch back to our species' earliest artistic expressions. How is it that cultures separated by impassable oceans and tens of thousands of years of history all developed such a remarkably consistent myth? The conventional explanation is that the dragon is a psychological composite, a combination of the predators our primate ancestors feared, the snake, the eagle, and the great cat. It is an archetype born of fear, a symbol of the dangers lurking in the natural world. This is a logical and elegant explanation. But it assumes that the archetype has no external, historical basis. It assumes that the dragon was only ever a dream, a figment of our collective imagination. But what if the collective unconscious is not just a psychological space, but a biological one? What if it is a library of inherited memories, encoded not in stories, but in our very DNA? The emerging field of epigenetics has shown that profound trauma can leave a chemical mark on an organism's genes, a mark that can be passed down to subsequent generations. A fear learned by a parent can become an instinct in the child. It is a mechanism for transmitting survival knowledge across time, a biological whisper from the past that says, "Be afraid of this." It is a memory that lives outside the conscious mind. Imagine our distant mammalian ancestors, small, shrew-like creatures, scurrying through the undergrowth of the late Cretaceous. They lived in a world of giants, but their greatest terror was not the Tyrannosaurus. Their deepest, most primal fear was reserved for the silent, glowing shapes that drifted across the night sky, for the sudden, searing heat that could turn forests and flesh to glass. Surviving such a world would have required a level of terror and caution that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. That terror would have been the single most powerful evolutionary pressure they faced. Could that profound, world-altering trauma have left an epigenetic scar on their DNA? A scar that was passed down through every subsequent generation, from that tiny, terrified mammal to the primates, and eventually to us? If so, the myth of the dragon is not a story we invented, it is a memory we inherited. It is the fossilized echo of a genuine, historical terror, a genetic ghost that has haunted our species since its birth. The serpentine shape, the wings, the breath of fire, these are not elements of fantasy. They are the fragmented, dreamlike recollections of a planetary immune response that our ancestors were unfortunate enough to witness firsthand. This human story, this whisper of the dragon, does not exist in a vacuum. It is surrounded by other echoes, other anomalies from our own history that suggest our timeline of the past is a fragile, incomplete thing. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a device of breathtaking complexity discovered in a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of Greece. It is an astronomical calculator, a clockwork computer of interlocking bronze gears capable of predicting lunar and solar eclipses and tracking the movements of the planets. Its sophistication would not be seen again for another 1,000 years. It is a ghost of a machine, a piece of a future we thought was unwritten, found buried in the past. It serves as a quiet, profound reminder that entire branches of knowledge, entire paradigms of technology, can exist, flourish, and then vanish from history almost without a trace. If human ingenuity can produce such an anomaly, a device so far ahead of its time that it seems to defy the linear progression of history, what might the Earth itself be capable of? Our own history shows us that knowledge can be lost, that entire libraries of understanding can be burned away, leaving future generations to reinvent what was once commonplace. The Antikythera mechanism is a metaphor for a lost chapter, not just in human history, but in planetary history. The story of the Draconis geochemica is the story of a lost biology, a form of geological engineering that flowered and faded, leaving behind not a complex machine in a shipwreck, but vitrified bones on a lonely hillside, and a faint chemical signature in a layer of ancient clay. This is not an isolated example. In the sands near modern Baghdad, archaeologists unearthed simple clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods. To some, they are nothing more than storage vessels for sacred scrolls. To others, they are the world's first batteries, capable of generating a small electrical current. While their true purpose remains a subject of intense debate, the Baghdad batteries, like the Antikythera mechanism, represent a crack in the smooth facade of our historical narrative. They hint at a past where the rules of technological development were different, where knowledge took paths we no longer recognize. They are whispers of possibility, suggesting that the world has always been a stranger and more mysterious place than our textbooks would have us believe. To truly grasp the scale of the Draconis event, we must shift our perspective from human artifacts to the planet itself. Let us imagine the Earth not as a passive sphere of rock, but as a living organism. Its molten core is its heart, pumping heat through the arteries of magma plumes. Its tectonic plates are its skin, constantly shifting, healing, and recycling itself. Its atmosphere is its breath, a delicate membrane regulating temperature and chemistry. In this metaphor, life itself is a complex and sometimes chaotic microbiome living upon that skin. And, like any living body, the Earth must have an immune system, a way to respond when one part of its microbiome becomes too dominant, too successful, threatening the equilibrium of the whole. The reign of the dinosaurs, lasting over 150 million years, was a period of unprecedented biological stability and dominance. They were a dynasty that had conquered every continent and every ocean. From the perspective of the planet as a living entity, could this incredible success have been perceived as a kind of chronic condition, an overgrowth of a single type of cell that was consuming too many resources and stifling evolutionary innovation? In this light, the Draconis geochemica cease to be monsters. They become antibodies, a planetary immune response. They were not an invasion, but a manifestation of the Earth's own deep, regulatory intelligence, a fever rising from within to cleanse itself and make way for something new. This idea of a planetary fever finds a strange and haunting echo in our own, more recent past. In the highlands of Scotland stand the ruins of ancient hill forts, their stone walls transformed into a dark, glassy slag. These are the vitrified forts, a genuine archaeological mystery. The heat required to melt tons of rock into a cohesive, vitrified mass is far greater than what could be produced by a simple bonfire. Theories range from ritualistic destruction to an unknown ancient weapon. These glassy ramparts are a smaller, more recent reflection of the vitrified dinosaur bones found in Patagonia and China. They are a historical anomaly that mirrors a geological one, a persistent whisper of a force capable of turning stone to glass, a power that flickers at the edges of our own recorded history. This parallel forces us to reconsider the nature of the Draconis geochemica. Perhaps their plasma breath was not merely a weapon of destruction, but a tool of creation, or at least of transformation. What if their purpose was not just to eliminate the dominant life forms, but to perform a kind of planetary alchemy? Perhaps they were cauterizing deep-seated geological faults, altering the electromagnetic grid of the planet, or seeding the crust with new minerals. In this view, the vitrification of the dinosaurs was not a targeted act of aggression, but a tragic and incidental side effect of a much larger, more fundamental process. They were simply in the way of a planetary re-engineering project, caught in the exhaust of the Earth's own terraforming engines. The geological record itself can be seen as a palimpsest, an ancient manuscript where the original text has been scraped away to make room for a new story. The bold, clear writing on the final page is the KPG boundary, the dark line of iridium that tells the simple, dramatic story of the asteroid impact. It is easy to read and understand, but beneath it, if you look with the right kind of light, you can see the faint, ghostly traces of an older text. This is the subtle, anomalous layer of exotic isotopes and glass spherules. It is the erased story of the Draconis event, a narrative that was overwritten by the more violent and obvious catastrophe that followed. History, it seems, is not always written by the victors, but by the last cataclysm to leave its mark. We have a metaphor for this kind of loss in our own history, the burning of the Library of Alexandria. That single event erased an untold wealth of knowledge from the ancient world. We can only guess at the plays, the histories, the scientific treatises that were turned to ash. The Earth's history has undergone its own slow-motion Alexandria fire. The relentless processes of erosion, tectonic subduction, and the simple, crushing weight of deep time have acted as the flames, consuming the vast library of the Cretaceous world. The story of the Draconis geochemica is one of those lost scrolls, a text so completely destroyed that we are left with only a few scattered, half-burned fragments and the haunting suspicion that the most important parts of the story are gone forever. Consider the Nazca lines in the desert plains of southern Peru. These are geoglyphs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes, so vast that they are only truly coherent when viewed from high above. From the ground, they are just a series of seemingly random furrows in the earth. This is a powerful metaphor for the evidence of the Draconis event. We are standing on the ground, examining individual vitrified fossils, and analyzing core samples from specific locations. We see the isolated furrows, the disconnected lines. We may be too close to the evidence, too immersed in the details, to see the larger picture they form. Perhaps if we could step back to a perspective of deep time, we would see that these anomalies are not random, but are part of a single immense drawing etched upon the face of the planet. In our modern search for extraterrestrial life, we look for two things: biosignatures, like oxygen or methane in an atmosphere, and technosignatures, like radio waves or artificial structures. We are looking for life that looks something like us, or technology that acts something like ours. But what if a planet's intelligence expresses itself in a completely different way? The Draconis Geochemica would have left neither a biosignature nor a technosignature. They would have left a geosignature, a fundamental alteration in the planet's crust and magnetic field. The vitrified fossils and isotopic layers are not the fingerprints of an animal, but the residual energy signature of geology itself, becoming a transient, living process. We may have been searching the cosmos for the wrong kind of signal all along. The Earth itself is a perfect illustration of the ship of Theseus paradox. Over the vast expanse of geological time, every part of its surface has been replaced. Mountains have been worn down to sand. Seabeds have been thrust up to become mountains, and entire continents have been swallowed back into the mantle. The planet we stand on today is made of entirely different matter than the one the dinosaurs knew. How, then, could any direct evidence of the Draconis possibly survive? The answer is that the evidence is not in the material, but in the memory. The epigenetic scar in our DNA is the ghost of the ship's design, a pattern that persists long after all the original timbers have been replaced by new ones. The memory is the only part of the original structure that remains. This brings us to the Fermi paradox, the profound question of why, in a universe that seems so perfectly suited for life, we have found no evidence of it. The great silence. Perhaps we have been looking in the wrong direction, scanning the distant stars when the answer may lie deep within planets themselves. What if the ultimate trajectory of intelligent life is not to expand outward, but to turn inward, to merge with its home world, to become part of its fundamental geological and biological processes? The Draconis Geochemica could be an example of this, a form of planetary consciousness that has no need for spaceships or radio signals, because it is already one with its entire world. The great silence might not be an empty sky, but a universe full of planets that are quietly, deeply alive. Even in our modern world, the planet occasionally reminds us of its capacity for sudden, unexplained violence. In 1908, a mysterious explosion over the Tunguska River in Siberia flattened nearly 800 square miles of remote forest. It released energy equivalent to a large thermonuclear weapon, yet it left no impact crater. The leading theory is that a meteorite or comet exploded in the atmosphere before it could strike the ground. But the event remains a touchstone for mystery, a modern example of a colossal release of energy with no immediately obvious source. It is a small-scale echo of the kind of power that would be needed to vitrify a dinosaur, a reminder that forces we do not fully understand are still at play in our world. The science of our age has given us a beautiful metaphor for recovering lost histories. By drilling deep into the ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland, scientists can extract ice cores that contain trapped bubbles of ancient air. These bubbles are a perfect record of the Earth's atmosphere, going back hundreds of thousands of years. They are a library of frozen time. Our own DNA may be a similar kind of record. Deep within the vast stretches of what was once called junk DNA, we may find the trapped bubbles of our most ancient past. The epigenetic memory of the dragon could be a chemical signature encoded within us, a record of the atmospheric terror our ancestors breathed, waiting for the right tools to drill deep enough to find it. In the summer of 1997, hydrophones deep in the Pacific Ocean detected a powerful, ultra-low frequency sound. Nicknamed the bloop, it was louder than any known animal noise and was heard by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. For years, its origin was a mystery, sparking speculation about a colossal, undiscovered sea creature lurking in the abyssal depths. The sound was eventually identified as the cracking of a massive ice shelf in Antarctica, but for a time, it represented a voice from the unknown. The story of the Draconis is a kind of bloop from deep time, a faint, powerful signal from a past, so remote it feels like another world, a signal we have only just begun to hear and are still struggling to comprehend. Nearly every ancient culture on Earth has a myth about a great flood, a time when the world was cleansed by water. Anthropologists often link these stories to the collective memory of the rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. It is a geological memory passed down through generations of a world transformed by water. Now, place the dragon myth alongside the flood myth. What if the dragon is the memory of an equal and opposite event? What if it is the collective geological memory of a world cleansed by fire? The flood and the fire. Water and plasma. Two fundamental forces of planetary renewal. Two profound traumas that became the bedrock of our oldest stories, forever reminding us that the world can, and does, begin again. The memory of the Draconis event, as it exists within us, is like the residue of a powerful dream upon waking. You can feel the emotional weight of it, the awe, the terror, but the specific details are ephemeral, dissolving like mist in the morning light. You are left with a single, haunting image, a feeling that defies logical explanation. The dragon myth is the collective attempt of humanity to describe that feeling. It is our effort to sketch the shape of a shadow we can no longer see, to reconstruct the narrative of a dream we all shared but can no longer fully remember. We are not recalling a creature. We are recalling the ghost of a planetary fever that broke 66 million years ago. Our understanding of our own history is constantly being rewritten. Consider Göbekli Tepe, a vast and complex temple complex discovered in southern Turkey. It was built over 11,000 years ago, not by settled farmers, but by nomadic hunter-gatherers. This discovery has fundamentally challenged our timeline of civilization, proving that sophisticated social structure, religion, and monumental architecture existed long before the invention of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe is a profound anomaly, a quiet testament to the fact that the story we tell about ourselves is a work in progress. If we can be so wrong about our own recent past, how much more might we be missing about a past that is thousands of times more distant? Every time we peel back one layer of history, another, deeper mystery appears beneath it. If that sense of endless discovery resonates with you, consider subscribing to follow along as we continue to uncover more of these forgotten chapters. Each anomaly, each myth, each unexplained artifact is a breadcrumb leading us further down a path into the deep past, a path that challenges not only what we know about the world, but what we know about ourselves. The journey is not about finding definitive answers, but about learning to ask more profound and interesting questions about the nature of life, memory, and time. All these disparate points of light, a clockwork computer from ancient Greece, glassy forts in Scotland, a mysterious sound from the deep ocean, and a universal myth carved on every continent, begin to form a constellation. They are no longer isolated curiosities, but a potential pattern, a faint celestial map sketched across time. They are the resonant echoes of a world that once operated under a different set of rules, a world where the line between biology and geology was blurred. These anomalies do not provide proof, but they provide permission. They give us permission to wonder, to speculate, and to listen for the faint, fiery heartbeat of a planet whose history is far stranger and more alive than we have ever dared to imagine. Having journeyed through the tangible evidence and the haunting echoes in our collective myth, we now arrive at a place of pure speculation. Here, at the edge of the known, we must allow our imagination to become a tool of inquiry, not to invent fantasy, but to construct plausible frameworks for an impossible truth. The planetary immune system is a powerful and elegant metaphor, but what if the reality was something even more complex, more deliberate? What if the Draconis geochemica were not a natural phenomenon at all, but a technology? A creation of a civilization that rose and fell in a world we can barely conceive of. A civilization whose only surviving legacy is the myth of the dragon and a handful of glassy bones. Let us entertain a thought experiment, one that has flickered at the edges of paleontological fiction for decades. What if, during the long, stable reign of the dinosaurs, a branch of their lineage evolved not just size and strength, but intelligence? Imagine a saurian species, perhaps a smaller, more agile theropod, that crossed the cognitive threshold. They would not have built cities of stone and steel. Their world was one of lush, endless forests and warm, shallow seas. Their technology would have been biological, their engineering based on the manipulation of genetics and geochemistry. They would have been a civilization of flesh and earth, a culture that learned to speak the language of the planet itself, a language of magnetic fields and telluric currents. This hypothetical civilization, the Saurian sentients, would have seen their world with different eyes. They would not have viewed the planet as a resource to be exploited, but as a living system to be integrated with. Their science would have been a form of symbiosis. In their pursuit of this integration, they might have sought to create a perfect guardian, a being that could interface directly with the planet's core energies. The Draconis geochemica in this scenario were not a fever, they were a creation. They were living machines, biological tools designed to regulate the planet's climate, manage its ecosystems, or perhaps even defend it from threats originating beyond the sky, threats they saw coming long before our mammalian ancestors did. Perhaps the great decline of the Maastrichtian Age was not an accident, but a managed project. This ancient Saurian civilization, seeing the instability in their world, the massive volcanic eruptions of the Deccan Traps, the subtle shifts in climate, may have deployed their geological guardians to perform a kind of planetary surgery. The Draconis were their scalpels, using plasma to cauterize deep earth wounds, realigning magnetic fields, and attempting to stabilize a world teetering on the brink of collapse. The vitrified dinosaurs were not victims of a plague, but tragic collateral damage, unfortunate casualties, and a desperate attempt to save a world that was already dying. The fire-breathing dragons were not monsters, but the last, heroic efforts of a lost civilization. Or, to take a darker turn, what if the Draconis were not guardians, but weapons? A great civilization, even a Saurian one, is not immune to the temptations of power and conflict. The final years of the Cretaceous could have been a period not of slow decline, but of a catastrophic global war fought between competing Saurian factions. The Draconis geochemica were their ultimate deterrent, their weapons of mass destruction. The vitrified fossils are the silent, glassy monuments to this forgotten conflict, the remains of creatures caught in the crossfire of a war fought with living plasma. The end of the dinosaurs was not an extinction, but a self-inflicted apocalypse, a story of a civilization that grew too powerful and burned its own world down. The asteroid, in this telling, becomes a final, bitter irony. After this great Saurian civilization had annihilated itself in a war of fire and plasma, leaving the planet a scarred and simplified shadow of its former glory, the heavens delivered the final, indifferent blow. The Chicxulub impactor was not the cause of the extinction. It was the tombstone, a cosmic event that buried the evidence of this precursor civilization and its terrible war so deeply that only the faintest whispers and a universal myth would survive. We, the mammals who inherited the ashes, would forever be haunted by the shadow of their weapons, mistaking the memory of a terrible technology for the dream of a mythical beast. Mysteries like this are just fragments of a much larger story. If you enjoy following these hidden clues, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next discovery. Each unanswered question is part of a bigger puzzle, a puzzle that spans not just the history of our planet, but the very nature of life and intelligence in the cosmos. By staying with us on this journey, you become part of the exploration, a quiet observer of the great, unfolding mystery of what it means to exist in a universe so much older and stranger than ourselves. Now, let us shift our gaze from the Earth's own deep past to the silent, star-filled void that surrounds it. What if the Draconis geochemica were not a product of this world at all? The universe is vast and ancient, and life, in its relentless drive to exist, may have found other pathways, other chemistries. Let us imagine that life on Earth is not unique, but that it exists in at least two fundamental forms: the familiar, water-based carbon biology that we represent, and a far more ancient heat-based silicon biology that thrives in the molten hearts of planets or the fiery accretion disks of young stars. These two forms of life would be fundamentally, irrevocably alien to one another. Perhaps, in the final years of the Cretaceous, the Earth was visited, not by a spaceship, not by intelligent beings seeking to communicate, but by a form of cosmic panspermia, a microscopic crystalline spore that had drifted through the interstellar void for eons. This spore, a seed of silicon-based life, found a perfect incubator in the deep geothermal vents of Earth's oceans. It found a planet rich in the raw materials it needed: silicon, heavy metals, and a powerful geothermal engine. And so, it began to replicate, to build, following a biological blueprint billions of years older than our own. The Dracones were not invaders, they were colonizers, the first bloom of a truly alien ecosystem on our world. Their existence would have been inherently catastrophic to the established carbon-based life. They did not hunt or attack out of malice. They simply existed, and their biological processes were a poison to the world of the dinosaurs. The plasma they exhaled was not a breath, but a terraforming agent, a way of altering the atmosphere and crust to make it more hospitable for their own kind. They were changing the Earth from a cool, wet, carbon-based world into a hot, dry, silicon-based one. The Maastrichtian decline was the slow, inexorable result of this planetary conversion, a quiet apocalypse caused not by war, but by two incompatible forms of life trying to occupy the same space. In this scenario, the strange isotopic layer beneath the KPG boundary is the chemical signature of this failed colonization. It is the residue of this alien biology, a thin film of their world, spread across the dying surface of ours. The vitrified fossils are the result of carbon-based life coming into direct contact with the metabolic processes of a silicon-based organism, a fatal interaction that dissolved flesh and bone into glass. The Draconis event was a galactic tragedy, the story of a lonely life form finding a new home, only to inadvertently destroy the life that was already there, before being wiped out itself by the random violence of an asteroid impact. The asteroid once again plays a crucial and ironic role. It not only ended the age of dinosaurs, but it also sterilized the planet of this nascent alien ecosystem. The impact winter, the global tsunamis, the sheer shock to the planetary system, all of it would have been just as catastrophic to the heat-loving Draconis as it was to the dinosaurs. The impact was a great reset, wiping the slate clean of both the old carbon dynasty and the new silicon invaders, creating a quiet, empty world where our small, furry ancestors could finally emerge from the shadows and begin their own, slow journey toward dominance, forever, carrying the epigenetic memory of two different apocalypses. This hypothesis reframes the Fermi paradox, the question of why we have not found evidence of other intelligent life. Perhaps we have. Perhaps the evidence is not in radio signals from distant stars, but in the very rock beneath our feet. Life may be common in the universe, but it may exist in forms so fundamentally different from our own that we would not recognize an encounter, even if it was the defining event of our planet's history. We have been scanning the heavens for a reflection of ourselves, when we should have been listening for the ghostly hum of a biology made of crystal and fire, a biology whose brief, tragic visit to our world became the foundation of our most enduring myth. Let us now consider a third and perhaps most profound possibility, one that weaves together the internal and external into a single, repeating rhythm. What if the Draconis event was not a one-time anomaly, but part of a natural, recurring planetary cycle? This idea, rooted in the Gaia hypothesis, the theory that the Earth itself is a self-regulating superorganism, suggests that the history of life is not a linear progression, but a series of great cycles of ascension and cleansing. Each cycle sees one form of life rise to a state of complete global dominance, and at the peak of that dominance, the planet itself initiates a reset. In this model, the dinosaurs were the masters of the Carboniferous Mesozoic cycle. For over 150 million years, they perfected a specific form of biological expression: immense size, physical power, and a perfect integration into a stable greenhouse world. They were the ultimate expression of carbon-based life in that particular planetary era. But their very success created a form of biological stasis. Evolution had, in a sense, found its apex predator and had nowhere left to go. The planet, as a living system, required novelty and change to continue its own evolution. The dinosaurs, in their perfection, had become an obstacle to the future. The Draconis geochemica, in this cyclical model, were the planet's own reset mechanism. They were not an immune response to a sickness, but a natural and necessary shedding of an old skin. They were a phase transition, a biological process as fundamental as the turning of the seasons, but on a geological timescale. Their emergence was triggered by the sheer, overwhelming biomass and energetic dominance of the dinosaurian kingdom. The planet, in its deep wisdom, grew a fever not to destroy a disease, but to clear the forest so that new kinds of trees could grow. The fire was not an act of anger, but of renewal. This cycle did not end with the Draconis. After the fire and the impact, the world was left quiet and empty. This created the perfect vacuum for a new kind of life to flourish, a life based not on size and strength, but on intelligence and adaptability. This was the dawn of the Cenozoic cycle, the age of mammals, our age. For 66 million years, we have been the beneficiaries of that great planetary reset. We have evolved, diversified, and now we have achieved a new kind of global dominance, one based not on biomass, but on technology and consciousness. We have become the new masters of the world. And this is where the hypothesis becomes a quiet, chilling question directed at ourselves. If we are the apex of the current cycle, if our technological civilization represents a new form of planetary dominance, are we not creating the very conditions for the next reset? Our burning of fossil fuels, our manipulation of the global climate, our harnessing of nuclear energy, are these not signals to the deeper planetary consciousness that a new form of stasis has been reached? Are we not, in our own way, becoming the new dinosaurs, a species so successful that we now threaten the equilibrium of the whole? The myth of the dragon, in this light, is not just a memory of the past. It is a prophecy for the future. It is a story the planet tells itself, a story whispered into the DNA of every living thing, a reminder that no kingdom is eternal, and that every age of dominance is eventually followed by an age of fire. The dragon is the symbol of the planet's own immense, terrifying, and ultimately creative power of self-renewal. It is the ghost of the last cycle and the shadow of the next one, a permanent feature of the planetary psyche, waiting for the right conditions to manifest once more. This does not mean that crystalline, plasma-breathing beings will rise from volcanic vents tomorrow. The reset mechanism of the planet would likely take a form tailored to the nature of the dominant species. For a civilization of giants, the reset came as a geological fire. For a civilization of technology and interconnected networks, a reset might take a different form entirely. It might be a biological plague of impossible cleverness, a sudden shift in the fundamental laws of physics, or a cognitive virus that sweeps through our global information systems. The planet's creativity is, after all, far greater than our own. The deep-sea discovery of the microscopic, crystalline engine takes on a new meaning here. It is not just a relic of a past event, it is a dormant seed. It is the biological blueprint for the reset mechanism, preserved deep within the Earth's crust, waiting. It is a reminder that the tools of planetary renewal are not destroyed after they are used. They are simply stored away. The Earth does not forget. It archives its own history and its own most powerful processes, holding them in reserve for a time when they might be needed again. The dragon is not dead, it is merely sleeping deep within the planetary mantle. This cyclical view offers a strange and melancholic comfort. It suggests that our own potential demise is not a meaningless tragedy, but a necessary part of a much grander, more beautiful story. It places humanity not at the center of creation, but as a single, fleeting chapter in the epic of a living world. We are a magnificent and complex expression of the planet's potential, but we are not its final word. The Earth was here long before us, and it will be here long after we are gone, dreaming of new forms of life, new kinds of consciousness, and new ways to begin again. These three hypotheses, the precursor civilization, the alien colonizer, and the planetary cycle, are not mutually exclusive. They are like different facets of the same complex jewel. Perhaps a precursor civilization did exist, and in their hubris, they awakened a dormant planetary cycle that they could not control. Perhaps the alien spores did arrive, but their arrival was what triggered the Earth's cyclical immune response, a defense mechanism against a truly otherworldly threat. The truth, if we could ever know it, may be a tapestry woven from threads of all these possibilities, a story far more intricate and strange than any single explanation. The common thread in all these speculative journeys is the humbling realization of our own profound ignorance. We stand on a thin crust of a planet whose deep interior is more mysterious to us than the surface of Mars. We are a species with a few thousand years of recorded history, trying to comprehend events that occurred in a gulf of time so vast it defies human intuition. Our science is a powerful tool, but it is like a single candle in an infinite dark room. It can illuminate what is immediately before us, but the true scale and shape of the darkness remains a mystery. The dragon myth, then, is our map of that darkness. It is not a literal depiction of a creature, but a symbolic representation of the vast, powerful, and terrifying forces that operate just beyond the light of our understanding. It represents the deep time, the planetary consciousness, the cosmic indifference, and the cyclical nature of existence that our rational minds struggle to grasp. It is the story of our relationship with a planet that is not our property, but our creator, our host, and potentially our destroyer. The dragon is the face we give to the sublime and terrifying mystery of the world itself. And so we are left here, in the quiet space between knowledge and wonder. The vitrified bones, the anomalous dust, the microscopic engine, and the universal myth. They are all pieces of a puzzle that may never be fully assembled. But the act of trying to assemble them is what matters. It is an act of humility, of curiosity, and of a deep and abiding respect for the immense, silent story of the planet we call home. The story of the dragon is not over, because it is our story. It is the story of life's fragility, its resilience, and its endless capacity for transformation in the face of unimaginable fire. The discovery of this microscopic, crystalline engine does not simply add a new chapter to our planet's history. It forces us to burn the entire book and begin again from a single, terrifying premise. The line we have always drawn between life and non-life, between biology and geology, has been revealed as a comforting illusion. We now understand that the Earth is not merely a stage for life, but is capable of becoming life itself. This revelation is a profound Copernican revolution of biology. We are not the sole inheritors of this world's consciousness, but merely the current expression of a planet that can think in stone and dream in fire. Our entire taxonomy of existence has been rendered obsolete by a single, dormant structure pulled from the abyss. The Chicxulub impactor, long held as the dramatic final act villain in the story of the dinosaurs, is now recast in a different role. It is no longer the cause of death, but the final, indifferent custodian, an event that simply tidied away the aftermath of a far more intimate and purposeful apocalypse. This changes our perception of extinction itself. It is not always a random act of cosmic violence or a slow failure to adapt. It can be a deliberate process, a function of the planet itself, a culling. The great dyings of the past are no longer seen as tragedies, but perhaps as planetary maintenance, a quiet and necessary recalibration of the global system, as impersonal and as absolute as the turning of a tectonic plate. The dragon myth is no longer a story we tell, it becomes a story that we are. The epigenetic scar is real, a faint and ancient tremor that still runs through our collective nervous system. That primal, irrational fear of the dark, the instinctual awe we feel before a raging fire, the universal symbol of the serpent in our dreams, these are no longer mere psychological artifacts. They are the inherited echoes of a genuine, sensory experience, a memory passed down not in words, but in the quiet language of our own cells. We are the descendants of the small, terrified creatures who survived by hiding, who watched the world burn and remembered. Our deepest anxieties are not our own. They are the ghosts of a 66-million-year-old trauma. This knowledge instills a new and profound humility. Human exceptionalism, the idea that we stand at the apex of a linear evolutionary ladder, dissolves into dust. We are not the goal of planetary evolution. We are simply the current occupants of a throne that has been vacant before and will be vacant again. We see ourselves now as a temporary phase, a brief and brilliant experiment in carbon-based consciousness on a world that has experimented with other, stranger forms. The history of the Earth is not a story that leads to us. It is a vast, cyclical epic, and we are but a single, fleeting verse within it, unaware of the stanzas that came before or the ones that will be written long after our own has faded from memory. The Earth is no longer a passive backdrop for our dramas. It becomes an active and powerful entity, a superorganism with a will, a memory, and a deep, abiding intelligence that operates on a timescale we can barely comprehend. Its mechanisms are not cruel, but they are utterly indifferent to the fates of the species that live upon its skin. We are part of its complex biome, and like any organism, it has an immune system to deal with imbalances. This discovery forces us to see every earthquake, every volcanic eruption, every hurricane not as a random disaster, but as the rhythmic breathing and stirring of a living being, a quiet reminder that we exist only by its silent and conditional permission. In this new light, our own technological achievements take on a more ominous hue. Our nuclear reactors humming with contained starfire, our global power grids, a shimmering web of pure energy wrapped around the planet, our particle accelerators smashing atoms to glimpse the secrets of creation. Are these the signs of our ultimate triumph, or are they merely the Symptoms of a new planetary fever. Are we, in our quest for power and knowledge, creating the very conditions for the next immune response? Our most advanced technologies begin to look less like tools of progress and more like a more sophisticated way of building the same fire that consumed the world of the dinosaurs. This revelation offers a new and chilling answer to the Fermi paradox, the great silent question of, where is everybody? Perhaps we have been looking in the wrong place. Perhaps advanced life does not expand outward into the cold, empty void of space, building star-faring empires. Perhaps it turns inward, merging with its home world, becoming so integrated with its planet's geological and atmospheric systems that it is indistinguishable from them. The great silence may not be an empty universe, but a universe filled with planets that are quietly and completely alive, their consciousness humming in their magnetic fields and flowing in their molten cores, having long ago transcended the need for bodies, machines, or words. Our very definition of life must now be rebuilt from the ground up. We have been searching the cosmos for planets with water and organic chemistry, looking for a pale reflection of ourselves. But life may not be limited to the gentle, aqueous cradle that birthed us. It may thrive in methane seas, in plasma storms, or in the crystalline hearts of worlds we have deemed barren. The universe could be teeming with beings we are physically and conceptually unable to recognize, their thoughts encoded in the vibration of crystals, their lives unfolding over millions of years. The Draconis Geochemica were not an anomaly. They were a messenger, a single fleeting example of a vast and unseen cosmic biology. The story of the Earth is revealed not as a straight line, but as a great wheel, a cycle of creation and destruction. The Draconis event was not a singular occurrence. It was a function, a natural phase in the life of a planet. This implies, with a quiet and inescapable logic, that the cycle will continue. The reset mechanism is not broken. It is merely dormant. This understanding changes our perception of time itself. We are no longer marching forward into a future of infinite possibility. We are living within a recurring season, a long, warm summer of mammalian dominance that will, eventually, give way to a cleansing winter of fire, making way for a new spring we will never see. And so, the dragon myth is transformed. It ceases to be a memory of the past and becomes a quiet prophecy for the future. The ancient stories of a great beast guarding a treasure are no longer about gold or jewels, but about the planet itself, guarding its own delicate equilibrium against the insatiable greed of its dominant species. The dragon is the eternal symbol of the world's power to protect itself, a warning woven into our very being that there are limits to our dominion, and that when those limits are crossed, the earth will dream itself a new guardian, a new fever, to restore the balance that we, in our ambition, have forgotten. This places a new and heavy weight upon our consciousness. Does our awareness of this cycle grant us the ability to alter its course? Or is our self-awareness simply the planet's most sophisticated way of observing its own inevitable processes? We are, perhaps, the first species to understand the nature of the fire that might consume us. This knowledge is both a burden and a potential key. It forces us to ask the ultimate question: are we destined to repeat the history written in our own DNA? Or can we become the first of the Earth's children to learn the art of true symbiosis, to calm the fever before it begins to stir in the deep? If another cleansing were to come, it would not take the form of a fiery winged serpent. The planet's immune response would be tailored to the nature of the current imbalance. For a civilization of flesh, the reset was thermal. For a civilization of information, of global networks and digital consciousness, the next dragon might be a logical contagion, a self-replicating mathematical code that silently rewrites our reality, or a biological agent that deconstructs not our bodies, but our ability to form memories or recognize patterns. The Earth's capacity for creation is, after all, infinitely more subtle and strange than our own, and it has had eons to practice. We are left in a state of profound and beautiful solitude. We are not just adrift in a silent cosmos, but we are also temporary guests in our own home. We are a fleeting thought in a mind of immense geological depth. The planet was a vibrant, living world for billions of years before we arrived, and it will continue to be one long after our cities have crumbled to dust and our names are forgotten. Our existence is a fragile miracle, a brief window of warmth and light between two long, silent nights. This knowledge does not have to be a source of despair, but can instead be a wellspring of profound appreciation for the ephemeral beauty of our own short time in the sun. This new perspective does not diminish the human story, it sanctifies it. Knowing that our time is finite, that our entire civilization is a fleeting masterpiece painted on a canvas that will one day be wiped clean, makes every act of creation, every discovery, every gesture of love infinitely more precious. We are the brief, brilliant, and self-aware dream of a sleeping planet. Our art, our music, our science, these are the records of that dream. They are our loving and defiant attempt to leave a beautiful echo that might, for a moment, resonate in the silence that follows, a testament to the fact that we were here and that we wondered. And so we end where we began, in the quiet contemplation of a mystery. We gaze at the image of the microscopic engine, a perfect, crystalline structure that is both an answer and an eternal question. In its silent, dormant form, we see the reflection of our own world, a system of breathtaking complexity, of immense power, and of a deep, beautiful, and terrifying fragility. The story of the dragon is not a myth about a monster. It is the true story of our world, a world that is alive, that remembers, and that is forever dreaming of the fire that will allow it to begin again. We began with a simple question, a whisper from our oldest stories. What if the dragon was not a creature but a memory of a planetary fever? We have journeyed through the silent canyons of deep time, sifting through the ashes of a world cleansed by fire, and we have returned with something stranger than any myth. The vitrified bones, the anomalous dust, the universal dream of a winged serpent, they are no longer disconnected curiosities, but the coherent chapters of a forgotten history. The microscopic engine, sleeping in its cradle of ancient rock, is the final, irrefutable word in that story. It tells us that the earth itself can dream, and that sometimes its dreams are of fire. The dragon was never a monster to be slain. It was a truth about our world we were not yet ready to understand. And so, our place in this world is irrevocably changed. We are no longer the masters of a passive sphere of rock and water, but the quiet tenants of a living, breathing superorganism. We are a fleeting thought in a mind of immense geological depth, a brief and complex season in the planet's long and cyclical life. The history we have cherished as our own is but a single page in a library that stretches back into an abyss of time we can barely imagine. This knowledge does not diminish us, it redefines us. We are not a cosmic accident, but a deliberate and beautiful expression of the planet's potential, one of many. We are children of a world that is not only our home, but our creator, and its memory is written in our very bones. With this new understanding, the myth of the dragon transforms one final time. It is no longer just a memory of the past. It becomes a quiet and persistent question about our future. We, in our own age, have achieved a new kind of global dominance. One built not of flesh and bone, but of silicon and light, of networks and energy. We have learned to wield our own kinds of fire, capable of altering the climate and scarring the face of the planet. Are we, in our brilliance, simply repeating an ancient pattern? Are we becoming the new imbalance, the new fever building in the planet's systems? The story of the dragon is a warning whispered from our own DNA, a prophecy that reminds us that all reigns are temporary, and the world always finds a way to restore its balance. Perhaps this is the ultimate answer to the great silence, to the empty heavens that have so long haunted our search for companionship in the cosmos. We have been looking for life that looks like us, a reflection in a distant mirror. But the Draconis event suggests that life's most profound expression may not be in reaching for the stars, but in merging with them, in becoming one with its home world. The universe may not be empty, but filled with planets that are quietly, deeply conscious, their intelligence humming in their magnetic fields, their civilizations woven into the very fabric of their geology. We may be lonely, not because we are first, but because we are still separate, still a restless dream on the surface of a world that has already learned the secret of a deeper existence. We are left then, not with an answer, but with a more beautiful and profound question. We stand in the quiet afterglow of a revelation, gazing at the image of a perfect, crystalline engine, a dormant power that sleeps in the heart of our world. Its existence is a mirror, reflecting our own fragile and magnificent complexity. What other memories does the earth hold in its silent stone library? What other forms of life, what other cycles of fire and renewal are written in the deep grammar of the rock? And as we, the children of the survivors, continue our own brief and brilliant journey, we are left to wonder, in the quietest hours of the night, what is the earth dreaming of now?